Hello, and welcome to our podcast series for 2011, focusing on landlord and occupier issues in Asia. Today I'm joined by Nigel Smith, Executive Director of Landlord Project Services for CBRE in Asia, and also Sebastian Skiff, Executive Director of CBRE Retail in Asia. Today we're going to be talking about regional trends with a particular focus on China, where a wave of supply is responding to very high demand. So, Nigel, with all this supply in the market, what are landlords doing to differentiate their product from the competition?
Well, Ed, primarily in three key areas: the design, location and sustainability factors. If I just talk quickly about the design first of all, we've heard a lot about what we termed the wow factor. And the wow factor looks really at the iconic status of towers, or the look, the feel, primarily from an international standpoint, where developers in Asia are trying to attract the type of tenant that wants to be in that type of building. A good example of a tall iconic tower would be in Beijing with China World Trade Center Tower 3. You can see that the overall quality of the buildings is certainly increasing, and that has definitely affected the way that the occupiers are making decisions. But actually in recent years we've seen a change from the wow factor, the iconic status, to what we now call the now factor. And the now factor really highlights the issues that tenants and occupiers are facing in terms of their productivity, and that's really coming down to the efficiency of the building. From companies' point of view, they're going to look at the floor plate. How many people can they get on the floor? What is the ceiling height? What are the specifications? What power supply? And so on and so forth. But from an employee's point of view, they're also going to look at things like the mobile connectivity, being able to take a telephone call from the car park through to the office lobby up into their office floor. The second key area, how they're differentiating their buildings, is in terms of the locational issue. This is in terms of the transportation, as most people would expect, how it interfaces with the subway station, the bus stations or taxi ranks. But it also relates to how the occupiers can actually interface with the retail podiums or the other facilities. Take, for example, Two International Finance Center in Hong Kong. Now, this is a 450,000 square meter commercial mixed-use development right above the airport express line, connected to the existing subway station. But within it, aside from the Two IFC office tower of 150,000 square meters, you've also got the hotel, the service department, the 80,000 square meter retail podium, and the 1,800 car parks. And when it's all brought together, you can start to feel how those office occupiers are reacting towards the actual use of the space within the office premises that they're working within. Finally, in terms of sustainability, developers are able to look at the sustainability angle as a different subset from the environmental angle. Over the last 10 or 15 years, we know that the green environment is certainly becoming more and more important. But what we've seen within that is a subset of sustainability. And really simply put, it's, will the building in 10 years' time be exactly the same or close as to when it was originally finished or handed over to the occupier? And what does that come down to? Well, simply put, quality of materials, of course, but also in terms of the property management and the way that they look towards upgrades of those facilities. It could be the lifts, it could be the shopping areas, it could be the facilities within the floor itself. Property management remains very much on the forefront of a lot of occupiers' minds, and it certainly helps them when they make a decision on a building. One example is perhaps 6 Battery Road in Singapore, which is a 26-year-old building, but looking at it today would be hard to believe. Now, whilst it's located in a prime location, nevertheless, the developers there have spent a lot of time and money over the years upgrading, albeit on a strategic basis, a lot of the facilities, both inside and outside. And as a part of that, they've also looked at upgrading the property management. So these are the three key areas that we've seen developers being able to differentiate themselves.
So, would you say that developers are actively or passively marketing their offices to occupiers?
Well, with the odd exception, passively. The belief is, I think, to so many developers, if you build it, they'll come. And today's occupiers are getting a little confused, to be honest. There is so much supply out there, all showing the same different types of look or feel or landscaping, that the tenants just don't know which way to look. What we found is that if you want to try and attract the better quality tenants and of course achieve some of those higher rentals, you need to look at your marketing campaign in a different light. Not just in terms of the websites that we've seen or HTML emailers, or even in terms of the office brochure or the show suite, because those are still all relevant. But what we've seen is that if you want to talk to your occupiers and attract them, you need to talk in their own language. Take, for example, the banking community. 20 years ago, they were stuck in their boardrooms. Nowadays, you see them advertising left, right, and center. What I'm trying to look at here is a way that developers can attract those same tenants by perhaps a more aggressive advertising campaign. The best example has to be in Hong Kong, I believe, in recent years, which is International Commerce Center. They took a campaign of advertising, outdoor marketing, and really blended that to attract 3 anchor tenants. And overall, the campaign was a success. And I believe that that's what's going to have to be done in the future, particularly if you want to start to create a new office hub.
Sebastian, on the retail side, how are developers responding to strong demand in the mainland Chinese market?
Excellent question, Ed. And the simple answer is very quickly. There's 28 million square meters, according to CBRE's latest research, of retail space coming onto the market in the top 15 Chinese cities between now and 2015, which is a daunting number. But when you break that down, there's 5.5 million of grade A space and 4 million of that being developed by experienced developers. And as we know, retailers' preference is to work with experienced developers. Developers who understand the retail planning aspects and also the ongoing management of a shopping centre venue. And then if we look further, we can segment that supply into a number of areas, which are all different types of retail. So you have the mixed-use development, which is benefiting from the symbiotic relationship between the hotels, the offices, the residential homes, all benefiting the retail. And then we have the sub-regional malls, which are almost self-sufficient within their own district-level consumer target market. And then we have the hypermarkets and the department stores. Again, each one very different, very specific audience. And an increasing trend now, and we're seeing a lot of, is the outlet centre developments. So as a response of a lot of the brands as they expanded through China with the full price stores, inevitably they're going to have an increase in the amount of product that is unsold at that level, and they need a quality venue in which to, to sell that remaining product. So the quality outlet centre development market is a very hot potato at the moment. And there's a lot of demand really coming from the retailers for particularly the second tier provincial capitals, let's call them, because they're not really second tier. And this is shown through how global is the business of retail. A CBRE publication came out in 2011 where many of the Chinese cities are actually more deeply penetrated, particularly in the luxury field, than some of their capital cities across the rest of the region. For example, the penetration in cities like Hangzhou, in Shenyang, is actually higher than it is in Sydney and Melbourne and New Delhi, for example. And more interestingly, in Beijing and Shanghai, the penetration is actually higher than in Milan and in Los Angeles. So we're seeing a lot of demand, and CBRE is working with a lot of the brands now as they continue to expand through the Chinese cities.
You bring up a number of interesting points. So do retailers adopt a different approach in regards to second-tier cities as opposed to first-tier cities?
Well, simply put, by not very much. One would expect retailers to adjust their merchandise product range to, adjust to the so-called second-tier cities, except they're not. And with one of our clients that we work with who did some detailed analysis on this, they found that of their 5 peer brands in the luxury sector, that there was the same product, it was 87% on a first tier store compared to their second tier store, city store. So, you know, the difference is very, very small. And interestingly enough, also between the first tier Chinese cities and Hong Kong, where those brands had representation, the difference or the sameness was 97%. So there was only a tiny difference of the more exotic items. And then we talk about the quality of the store and the size of the store in the second tier markets compared to their first tier city. And again, there's absolutely no difference at all. If you exclude the flagships in the first tiers and just look at the the normal stores in those first tier cities, they are almost exactly the same as the second tier city stores. And CBRE are working with a lot of retailers now in looking at their strategies for the second tier cities. Everybody's very, very excited about the opportunities. And what's very important to understand is how the pipeline that we talked about a little earlier, how that's going to affect the strategy for each retailer in each market. But as I've said, there's enough differentiation in the type of product that's coming online that there will be, in our view, absolutely no oversupply situation.
Just before we finish, Nigel, I want to go back to you for a moment. You made a point earlier about the green agenda. Now, a question that is often asked is the green agenda financially viable?
Yes, Ed, for sure. Certainly from an investment point of view. We've seen over the last few years the cost of construction for green buildings or green features within buildings coming down, primarily because there is more of a demand for these type of items. We've definitely seen an interest from the occupiers wanting lower energy costs, better waste management systems, so on and so forth. CBRE have done their own research in America, and what we found is that not only are tenants wanting to go to these buildings, they are actually starting to achieve a higher rental. Now in Asia it's going to be a lot slower. The trend has established itself in America, but we believe that it will certainly come out to Asia and for sure will go into China. And it will certainly help those tenants start to differentiate again, as we were saying earlier, in terms of the different types of buildings that they're looking for.
Nigel, Sebastian, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. So that concludes today's podcast. We hope you've enjoyed watching it. If you want to find out more about CBRE's activities, or you would like to view other podcasts which you have available, I suggest you visit our website, cbre.com. Have a nice day.